Hi all, it's great to be here for the first Good Food for All Sustainable Sundays conversation of 2022. Food is bigger than what's on your plate. It's science, it's culture, it's history, it's livelihoods and love. And each day, the food choices we make impact people, planet, and good food can strengthen communities, power our economies, and protect our planet if we act now. So there's a range of actions that we can take that everyone everywhere can do to make a difference. And this is really important depending on the foods we put on our plate. And so Sustainable Sundays has been created as a call to action to eat at least one healthy, climate-friendly meal each week. And so in order to elevate the important action that we can all take, we have with us Dr. Kalibata, the President of AGRA, and the former UN Special Envoy for the UN Food System Summit. And she's going to be joining us to convene a monthly conversation around good food, where we're going to gather together diverse and exciting speakers from around the world that are driving impact on food from where they are. And so today's conversation will focus on the culture and histories behind the food we're eating. How can we grow, source, eat to nourish people and the planet? How can we learn from one another from different food cultures and past generations? We're going to have the perspectives of a chef, a farmer, a youth climate advocate, an aquatic food researcher, and we're going to explore the actions that we can take to drive progress for healthy people and planet. So to get this conversation started, I'm going to ask our convener, Dr. Kalibata, to join me. Hi, how are you, Dr. Kalibata?
Good.
Great to see you. How was your holiday? How was your holidays? I know we've just come back in the new year. I'm sure you had some interesting meals that you remembered from your holidays. Tell us, how are you?
Thank you for having me, Paul, and good to be here. Good to be with the community on food systems again. I had a perfect holiday after 2 years of intense work with the Food Systems Summit. So I was really ready to have some rest. So I did get some rest. In terms of food, I thought, based on this conversation, I thought I should bring something that really reminds me not just the sweetness of the food, but also then the culture that is behind the food that we eat, the journeys that are behind the food that we eat, and the value that the food puts on our table. So I brought the banana. And I tell you what I like the banana about. The banana is, for Africa, the banana came in with trade, with Asian traders. It came from Asia, but it came as one type of banana. The interesting bit is when it reached Africa, in East African highlands, it transformed itself into different types of bananas that have since defined the culture in East Africa. So you find bananas that are used in marriages, you find bananas that are used on a funeral, you find bananas that are used, yes, wow. Ceremonies, marriage ceremonies.
Wow. And these are different bananas, Agnes.
Yes, even here I'll show you there are different bananas. But the thing that really amazes me, because I did follow the banana all the way to Southeast Asia where it came from, what's really amazing is just how, because of the agroecology in Africa, it's just changed to different types of bananas. And we have now in Africa, we have some of the widest diversity of bananas based on the evolution that occurred on the African continent since the bananas got here. But also, it then got to define people's cultures as they worked with it, and really some of it is used for beer, some of it is used for food, some of it is used for all sorts of things, but most of it you can identify with different cultures. And that's, for me, what I really love about this beautiful plant. That is also an environmental friendly plant.
Yep.
When you look at how much it holds the soil, how much surface it has to help with carbon fixation and all that stuff. So there's a lot that is going on with this plant.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You mentioned you've stepped down after 2 years as special envoy, which is a massive contribution that you made to really drive forward this food system conversation. And now you're back at AGRA full time. What's something you're excited about in 2022? What are you looking forward to?
So when I joined the role of special envoy, I was rather anxious based on the work that I see every day and the work that I do every day and the challenges that I see. Coming back to Africa, I'm excited that we're able to get the food system conversation going, to raise the stakes with regards to what the very challenges I personally was concerned about are now globally shared as challenges. So I'm going to focus on helping countries in Africa move their food systems forward, so we have clear strategies, so we have mechanisms of implementing the food systems resolution that we came up with. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be work every day. And there are lots of partnerships that I'm going to be building on that we had in the Food Systems Summit. But it's something I'm excited about. There's a whole lot of work that we can do with countries themselves, with private sector, with different institutions. And I'm looking forward to all that work here on the African continent. Yeah.
And is there a particular action that you'd hope to bring forward from 2021 that you'd think we need to make sure we don't forget this year?
Well, there are a number of things, but if it came to one particular action, remember every year in Africa, we have the African Green Revolution Forum. I want to make sure that at this forum, I have at least 5 countries that have strategies on food systems. That's number one. Number two, I really want to get this one across as well. I want to make sure that we have a new way of talking about farming in Africa that recognizes the challenges we have in our landscape. So I hope we can also come up with helping the farming ecosystem understand that there's a new way of doing farming that is commensurate with where our food systems find themselves today. So those are going to be my 2 biggest challenges.
Yeah, that sounds like it's going to keep you busy.
By the way, Paul, sorry, Paul, I just have to mention this. Just like I talked to you about the banana, if there's one thing that I want to make sure that we do is just build that culture that helps us understand the relationship of food and our environment and our nutrition. Of course, food primarily is our nutrition, but can we also help build that relationship with our cultures and our environment? And that's why Sustainable Sundays is going to be such an important program, so that we bring it to people, we learn from people, but we also help them learn from the whole community that we have created during the Food Systems Summit.
Yeah, no, and I think this is something that you really brought in your leadership, was to keep that conversation where we need to hold in balance some of the challenges we face, but we also need to recognize the differences that we have in our globe around food, the history, the culture, the importance of food, and even enjoying food. And I know from last year, some of my favorite memories are of when we had these Zoom calls where we were all sharing our food and having conversations about, what are you eating and what does that look like? But so let's see, we're going to invite some panelists. I've invited a few friends to join us. So let's get them to turn their videos on. And we're going to get them to introduce themselves and maybe just we'll get you just to introduce yourselves and what's a food or ingredient that you'd like to just tell us about, and then we'll get into some specifics. But maybe Amanda, we'll start with you. So do you want to introduce yourself and what's a food or ingredient that you'd like to share?
Thank you, Paul. My name is Amanda Namai. I am Go-Getters Lead at Generation Africa and a youth advocate for climate action and zero hunger. So today I have a full meal and some snacks with me. So this is fish. It's called tilapia. It's a freshwater fish, though I'm from the coast, I eat the sea fish. And how it's prepared, usually you can have it fried, or you can stew it with some coconut from Mombasa. So we love a lot of coconut. And then this is called chapati, made from wheat flour and water and oil. And then it's kneaded, rolled, and then just fried on a flat pan. So this is my dish. Wow. Or you could have this either with stew, or if it's dry, you can have it with ugali, which is made from maize meal.
Wow.
Yes, and then locally sourced fruits. Yeah, so these are fruits that I'm sure are known to most of us. Mangoes also from the coast. I come from there, and I was recently from home. Some apples, some passion fruits, and a drink, plant-based milk.
Wow.
Paul, I'm sure you know this. Yes.
That's great. I've seen that fish before in down on the coast. What did you have there in your hand?
So this is another dish from the coast. It's called mahamri. It's also made from wheat flour, and you use yeast, and you can add, in Swahili it's called iliki, just to spice it up a bit. So you can have this with tea as a dessert. Oh, so that's the full meal.
Wow, thanks, Amanda. Yazine, do you want to introduce yourself and an ingredient you wanted to talk about?
Sure, thank you, Paul. My name is Yazan. I'm an organic farmer based in the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates. We grow mainly fruits and vegetables, as well as being producers of organic eggs. Today, the ingredient I brought with me is actually moringa. So moringa leaves, moringa trees have fascinated me in the past few years. And for me, they're very important because this tree is very hardy, it's drought tolerant, and then the nutrition profile is just incredible. So in 100 grams, you have about 80 water. So if you remove the water, you dehydrate, you have 10 grams protein. That's about 50% of the mass, just protein. And then you have calcium and vitamin C and iron. Wow. It's an absolutely incredible plant. It's very hardy, salt tolerant, heat tolerant, and one of the foods that we need to focus on for a better future to combat malnutrition and hunger.
No. That's great. Thanks, Yazine. Shakuntala. Oh. Let's get you unmuted.
Yeah,
there we are.
Thank you, Paul. And firstly, Happy New Year to all, and thank you for inviting me together with other friends and colleagues at this event. My name is Shakuntala Tilsted. I'm the global lead of nutrition and public health at World Fish, CGIAR, and I'm also the 2021 World Food Prize laureate. Right now, I know my work base is in Penang, Malaysia, but right now I'm in Denmark, in the cold north of Europe. And what I'd like to show is the dish we have here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this herrings is an extremely popular dish, goes back to way back when in the north, and this is marinated herring, which is then in a curry sauce.
Oh wow.
And when I came to Denmark and started living in Denmark, of course I knew that herring would be an important part of the diet, but that there would be a ready-to-make product with marinated herring in a tomato paste like this, which is then used on the rye bread, which is here, yep. And then topped with onions and topped with some dill, and that's a very, very common part of the lunch in Denmark. Marinating herring goes back to the Middle Ages. I've tried to find out when was curry introduced in the Nordic countries. I haven't found that out yet, but everybody tells me, oh, we've always used curry. So this tells you something about how cultures mix and how food food habits, food taste travel across cultures. I mean, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago and living in Penang. It's all about curry, but coming to Denmark and seeing curry in a product that's being used for lunch and which children take in their lunch packages to school was quite extraordinary for me. I'd like to make some comments, first of all, about what Agnes said, talking about bananas. And it's so important when we talk about foods, the diversity of foods. And if we would just use one word and one concept of food, which is the diversity within the diet, diversity within the food group, and diversity in food items like the banana, I think that would get us very far. And for years, we've moved away from the diversity with producing staple crops and only one single hybrid variety, for example, for staple crop. And to Yasin, I would say that in Cambodia, we have used moringa, and moringa, of course, is common in Cambodia, but together with communities, we dry the small fish from the freshwater fish, from the rice field fisheries, and dry moringa leaves and add the two products together to make a powder of moringa and fish, which we use as a powder in the porridges of young children, because as Yasin was telling us about all these important ingredients in moringa, so added with fish, that it's a superfood in the complimentary foods of young children.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Shakuntala. And I think, as bananas, I think I remember, Agnes, with the banana, there was an issue because there was a threat, a fungus or something that was affecting banana supply globally because we didn't have the diversity. And I think this is key. I don't know, what kind of bananas is it a diversity of bananas that are growing across Africa?
No, just to show you the diversity, this is this is a Cavendish type, the sweet banana. Here, this is the Gros Michel. It's also sweet. Oh, wow. But the one that I'm most proud of is this guy here. You don't eat a whole lot of this in the West. This is the banana that is for cooking. It's starchy. We cook it here in Africa, mostly steamed. Yeah. That's the one that has so much diversity around it that really has defined itself in the cultures here. Yeah. But the point you're making, the banana bacterial wilt, is nearly wiping out the industry around here because of just that monoculture, monocropping system that doesn't present a whole lot of challenges to the problem once it comes. And that's the beauty of having a whole lot of diversity. The system is able to push back. In this particular system, there's really no major pushback on the bacterial wilt.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
Agnes, Agnes, do you make a distinction between banana and plantains?
100%.
I think that
I don't have any plantain on my table.
But this is something I know. I want to come to Chef Daniel in just one second, but I also know Yazin, the farm. This is, as an organic farmer, one of the things. When I saw your farm, we were talking about the diversity, and you had like something in almost every 2 or 3 rows. You changed the crop so that there was. Just explain that to us just briefly, and then.
Yeah, correct. So as a farm as a whole, obviously we have a large variety of crops. We're doing over 60 varieties, as well as keeping trees, different varieties of trees and shrubs, so that we maintain or develop a good biodiversity. But even within the crops themselves, I wouldn't grow all my corn or all my carrots or whatever crop it is, I wouldn't grow it in one plot. So it's constantly, most of the crops are divided into 6, 7 plots that are intertwined between each other, and they are on constant rotation. So the benefit to this is obviously you're keeping insect populations down. You're not maintaining one stable, steady source of food and environment for any kind of pest. You have pests in organic agriculture. The whole concept is to try and replicate the natural balance that nature has. And you can only do that when you have a biodiverse area. If you are removing everything, removing trees, and as mentioned, having a monocrop, there's absolutely no way. So you can never have monocrop organic agriculture without the birds and without the healthy insects. You're going to have one insect decimating everything, and then you're going to spray for that, and that'll kill some beneficial insects, and then you'll have more problems and more problems. Yeah. So this is where we've reached, and the companies that sell us a lot of these products, they sell to solve previous issues, right? So they give you the solution that will help you do a monocrop today, but they are not resilient. They do not give you the solution of the challenges of the future. It's slow moving, and it doesn't give you the protection that the natural environmental biodiversity protection does, which has been doing it for a very, very long time.
No, it's absolutely. And I think this is really key. And I think it's how we bring all this together into the plate. I mean, I've bought some, it's beans and quinoa and salad, which is for my lunch, which it's the same. It's got so many different varieties there. I know Agnes is smiling because I have beans, and we've talked a lot about beans, and they're big in Rwanda as well. But I think that diversity in how we farm, but also in how we eat, is really key. And so I want to go to Chef Daniel. So Chef Daniel, I know you've prepared a recipe for us today, which we're going to be able to all have a look at. But introduce yourself. And maybe what have you prepared for us today?
Well, hi, my name is Daniel Kaplan. It's really quite an honor to be here with such an amazing panel. I'm a chef in Bogota, Colombia. I work for a large restaurant group, managing 3 of the restaurants in the gastronomical area. I've also been a member of the Chef's Manifesto for about 2 years now. So it's been really incredible to listen to all of you, because the last 2 years through the pandemic, I've had a lot of time to study a lot more about biodiversity, about sustainability, and it's all just starting to come together for me. But I think that's also what's going on around the world. If there's one thing that came out of this pandemic is this, meetings like this and events like this that are so personal, nutritionally, environmentally, culturally. Just now listening to you guys talk about bananas and plantains. Well, there's 4 different regions here, 5 different regions, and we all have the same food. Colombia is also known for its plantains. The green one that you were showing, we call it plátano colicero, but we also have the plantain. So it's just amazing to be able to be a part of all of this. Well, the ingredient that I'm going to be talking about, and it's going to be important in our recipe, is the cassava, or we also call it mandioca, or wild yuca, which is in Colombia, it's indigenous to the Amazon region. Also in there's going to be a fish called Piraduku, which is also indigenous to the region. And I'm going to be showing how one ingredient can make so many different, more ingredients. I mean, out of the plantain, we're going to have farinha, farofa, cassava, tapioca, tucupi, and it all comes from the same plant. So it's just a little bit of showing how we can be a little bit creative and how we're going to do. Well, you'll see it in the recipe. I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting.
Okay, well, we're gonna see this recipe. So let's take a look at this video, and Chef Daniel's gonna take us through. So over to the video.
Hi, I'm Daniel Kaplan from Bogota, Colombia, and today I'm going to be making a traditional fish stew soup from the Amazon region, from Colombia. I'm going to be using Piraduku, which is a fish that comes from the Amazon River. What we're going to do is we're going to saute it, and then we're going to add a few ingredients. Here we have a little tucupi. Tucupi comes from the cassava, or the wild yucca. We have farofa, and we have farina, which is also from the yucca. A lot of the ingredients we're going to have today are made out of the yucca. And this is tapioca, which we've rehydrated in a little bit of a stock that we made with some onions, with some wild onions. And we're going to decorate with the cassava. So here we have our hot oil. Make sure it's nice and hot. We're going to season our fish on both sides. Salt and pepper. This pepper comes from the Putumayo, which is, it's also grown by the indigenous people in that region, also very near the Amazon, actually part of the Amazon. Okay. Once our oil is very hot, you can use any kind of oil. Here we're using vegetable oil. And I'm going to put our fish down. I left one with the skin, one without the skin, so we can get a little bit of a crispy skin, and that's for a little bit of decoration. So we'll cook it on the skin side down first. And then a little bit more salt. What's really nice about this tucupi is that it also works, it's a great flavoring ingredient. If you don't do it right, if they don't do the extraction right, it can actually be toxic. So it's got a lot of umami, so it's going to give us a really, really nice flavor. And this fish, this stew or soup, however you really want to call it, is they eat it for breakfast because it gives you a lot of energy in the morning. Still, I'm using a Teflon pan, which makes it a little bit easier, so whoever wants to do it at home as well. You can flip the first piece. Have it nice and brown. You gotta get a little bit more color. I like to add a little bit more salt once we flip it. Now we have a nice crispy skin. It's going to cook for another about maybe 2 or 3 minutes. We're going to add a little bit of our tucupi now, and we're going to save a little bit for later. I'm just going to give it a really nice flavor. A little bit more. And we're going to add some scallions as well, also to give it a little bit of color and a little bit of more flavor as well. And add a little bit of now we're actually ready to plate our fish. Put the skin without the skin on the bottom, with the skin on the top. And put our onions, which have caramelized a little bit thanks to the tucupi.
Chef Daniel, I just sort of jump in and just as we're watching this, tell us a little around this fish, and can you give us a bit of background?
Absolutely. Well, this is actually the largest freshwater fish in the world. It's called Piraduku, and it's from the Amazon region, which encompasses Brazil, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, and of course, Colombia. It's got a lot of protein. It's very, very healthy. It is a seasonal fish, so we have to be really careful not to try to get it. If we get it when it's not in season, that means it's not coming from a sustainable source. So that's the one thing we have to be really careful with. And we can't get it too small because that means they're fishing babies. So it's got to be a certain size. Usually it's about 3 meters long and wow. 200 kilos in weight. So it's quite large, quite large. Wow. But it's got a lot of flavor. And like I said, in the morning, they have this fish because it's a waker-upper, you know, it's gonna really get people going in the morning. So you can have a hard day's work, and it's just really delicious as well.
So it's you eat it at a particular part of the day as well.
Right. I mean, yeah, I'm sure you can also eat it for lunch, but traditionally, yeah, when it's cooked in a stew like this, it's a breakfast dish.
Wow, it looks delicious. We're gonna get that recipe out so people can have a look. I know you're using cassava. I was going to ask Dr. Kalibata. I know cassava is used across multiple food cultures. It's in Colombia, parts of the Amazon, as well as parts of Africa. You know, can you tell us a little bit about, you know, how you've engaged with cassava, how you've seen it being used, where it comes from?
Thank you. Let me tell you that while we're in the pre-summit in Rome, I actually went to a Vietnamese restaurant. Oh, wow. And I ate a cassava cake. Can you imagine your dessert is cassava? But so I was like, wow. But you saw that when we were in the United Arab Emirates, we also had a tomato dessert. So it's amazing what people can do with food. I mean, here in Africa, cassava is very important. The most important part of cassava, I would say today, is it grows in more difficult areas that don't have as much rainfall as many other crops would. So it's really one of those crops that you find on the margins of where most other crops would go. So it's a very strong food security crop for the African continent. Yeah. Number two, it's also becoming extremely important as a way of reducing dependency on wheat. So talk about diversification. So you see a lot of African businesses now take on a whole lot of cassava to use in bread. So in fact, I think in Nigeria, there's already a decree that says that at least your bread should be at least 10% cassava so that it's used as a local ingredient. But it shows also so many other things. It's that crop that is eaten, its leaves are edible. Yeah. And the roots, of course, are edible. It's very good for resilience. It has so many varieties that can be used. So it's really something that is great to explore and to take forward as we go into this food culture. It's something also we share from one continent to another to another. It's something that has become extremely important that we should all be celebrating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, to me, one of the things with food, it's so good to see them on a plate. It looks delicious. And as Daniel, you were talking, I all of a sudden was getting hungry, and I'm sort of thinking about, you know, watching the flame, and you talk about the seasoning and where it comes from, and it kind of connects me. You know, and I think this is really important. And I think it's also important that we remember that things come from a farm. And Yazin, you know, as a farmer, I know one of the things you've done is also work in the UAE in a place which is very dry, and most people don't have that experience of going to a farm or seeing, you know, growing in their backyard or this kind of thing. You've really done some education programs at the Biofarm, and you've bought to inspire people to think about food. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done to kind of help people connect with food in the UAE?
Well, the UAE, you know, has been importing a large portion of its food. A large portion of its population are what you would call expats. They're here away from their home, and they wouldn't necessarily be connected to farmland anymore, production anymore, and we felt that it was necessary to open up the farm for visitors. so that children can come out and experience agriculture hands-on. You know, we even see it in our children and in our friends, that once they connect with the food, once they are able to see how it's grown, and they experience it, they change how they behave towards food, how they treat food, how they respect and enjoy different foods. So we opened up tourism at the farm. We have a restaurant as well that uses mainly our irregular shaped vegetables and teaches people what to cook with the things that you usually won't use, like the carrot tops and the beetroot leaves and broccoli leaves and such things that we usually discard. And we have tours that run hourly on tractors, and people get out and they're able to touch soil for the first time in a few years for a lot of people that are busy in the city, and harvest for themselves and get to ask questions, get to ask real questions, especially about sustainable agriculture. Is organic a gimmick? What does it mean? What does soil regeneration mean? And what we do at the farm is avoid any of the negatives, scaring them about pesticides or anything like that. We don't bring it up. The whole purpose is everyone understands what organic means. We're trying to show the how. So what we do is just talk about, okay, this is how we protect our crops. This is how we build our soil. This is our challenges. And then you see people, okay, now I understand what organic means. Now I understand what people say when they say sustainable agriculture or carbon, capturing carbon in soil, or the importance of trees and biodiversity. So we found that's the best way of educating, just involving people and having fun. 10 minutes education, 50 minutes fun and pictures and harvesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to me, this is really important for us to be able to connect and see the different ways you do things. And I mean, even just talking around these, continents, we've talked about the history and traditions of food, but we also need to think about the future and thinking how we take that forward. And I know one thing over the last couple of years has been, even in the UN Food System Summit process, there was lots of young people brought in. And Amanda, you're working with agri-food entrepreneurs, thinking about this next generation and how does it get involved? What are you seeing that's sort of shaping the future of this conversation from your perspective?
Thank you, Paul. So one of the things I'll touch on, and you preempted on that, is the future of food. And what I've seen with the go-getters and some of whom have won small businesses. One of the winners was a go-getter from 2019. So some of the innovations that we're seeing around food, and it goes on to reduce food loss, food waste, and also how to make food more exciting. We have one of our entrepreneurs who have used local ingredients that are rich in nutrients and have packaged it into ways. I have some of the teas. One of our winners, she used taki berry, and this is very high in iron, and she uses this to, so this is a form of tea, caffeine-free, gluten-free, it's vegan, and it's given to pregnant women and lactating mothers to help with their iron buildup.
Tell us a little, what more could people be doing as around trying to drive good food? What kind of action do you hope to see happening in our world at the moment?
Okay, thank you for that question. And what I am seeing right now, and I'd like to be propagated going forward, with the good foods that we're having, the promotion of local foods, as Dr. Kalibata had said, we also have our culture infused in this food, and also food ties us together. Beyond just feeding us, it also brings us together. So what I really like seeing, and I don't know if I've frozen at this point or not, some of the foods, the local foods are being processed and being packaged into readily available snacks, and also increasing the shelf life of some of these local foods that are available, like cassava, like banana. They're being made into snacks that also are easily attractive to young children so that they can be able to get the nutrients from that. And also, I really like the fact that we are going back to our indigenous naming systems of our food, so that I know Chef Daniel will teach me how to say that name of the fish so that I get it right. And I don't know if you got the part where I spoke about ukwa, which is available in Nigeria and which is currently being processed and even exported to other countries. So you get a little bit of each country's culture when we're able to add value to our food, increase the shelf life, reduce food loss and food waste, and at the same time promoting our indigenous cultures and tapping onto the rich nutrients that local foods have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, as we were talking, you know, even today, you know, you bought fish, Daniel's bought a fish dish. Shakuntala, what, you know, you talk about aquatic foods. And, you know, often we think about, when we talk about agriculture and food, we forget about the oceans. We forget about waterways. We forget about rivers. And can you tell us a little bit about, you obviously grew from an island, so you have memories of you know, aquatic foods. Tell us a little bit about why, you know, how did those memories come together, but also why are aquatic foods really good for people and for planet?
Thanks, Paul. Yes, and I come from an island, Trinidad, in the Caribbean, where, you know, aquatic foods are an important part of culture and of diets. But it's not just fish, it's the diversity of aquatic foods. And it's not just animals, it's plants, and it's microorganisms. And we see this seaweed, and you see this throughout the world, that diversity and seasonality, which of course goes with culture, are so important. These three aspects of food are so important. And if we are not careful, we would lose a lot of that. And that means that we would have less diverse systems, and less diverse systems and less interesting, but also less nutritious and don't meet the needs for people. Then when I talk about the diversity of aquatic foods, I focus a lot in the areas where I work, in the regions where I work, on low trophic species. Like I showed, for example, the herons from Denmark. When I'm in Bangladesh, I work a lot with small indigenous fish from inland waters. And in Africa, when I work in Malawi or Zambia, then we talk a lot and use a lot about the small fishes, the small indigenous fishes that are from the inland lakes. And if we would use this wide diversity and also think a bit about sustainability and think about using low trophic species within aquatic food systems, then we would be able to have better opportunities for nourishing both people and for the planet. And I really wish that we use, as Agnes uses this key word of biodiversity, and use that as a way forward in our transformation of food systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, what's a reflection as a chef on this kind of conversation so far?
Well, to me, it's just how bringing everything together. I mean, we've talked about different ingredients and we all use them. Moringa is also grown in Colombia. Yuca all over in different regions, and of course, the plantain, different types of seafood. Right now, I mean, what to me is really important is to be really sustainable, not just environmentally, but also socially, culturally, economically. We need to show people the importance, especially us as chefs who are communicators as well, in many cases. We need fresh, natural food. We need to stay away from the ultra-processed foods. And I think this is little by little, we're getting there. And everything that's been done with the United Nations, with the Chef's Manifesto, with all the different associations, we are getting there, whether it's through vegan communities, whether it's non-vegan, whether it's just talking about about before in the farm, where you have livestock, where you everything living together, biodiversity. So I think it's just a step forward.
No, I agree. And I mean, we're coming to the end of this session, and I want to get, Agnes, your reflections on the conversation. But to me, one of the things that stands out to me is the importance of having the different perspectives. We have a researcher, we have a young entrepreneur who's really working on agripreneur. We have farmer, we have a chef. You know, we all have roles to play in educating from different perspectives. And each of you has brought, in my mind, some of those different diverse views and perspectives, which add to the enjoyment of food, but also the right choices around food. And I think, you know, with Sustainable Sundays, this is the idea is to just start with one choice, you know, once a week, and that's how we drive that shift.
I'd like to make a comment of where we are today with COVID-19 and the solutions that we have that are using for COVID-19. I think it's a bit frustrating that we have so many joining the ranks of the poor and the malnourished. And we know we have solutions that we can use. For example, school feeding program, mother and health care programs, with respect to the diversity, the culture and the tradition of foods, which are nutritious. And we know this, and we aren't using these solutions within the, you know, within the solutions that are being put forward now for meeting the demands we have with COVID-19. And I wish we would move faster and have some actions, just not words.
No, absolutely. Having that action is really critical. Dr. Kalibata, do you want to give some closing reflections before I wrap up?
Good. One thing that came out strongly for me in this conversation that I appreciate all of us coming together is just the going back, how we keep going back to the diversity of food and the need for diversity of food as a way of ensuring health of people, nutrition, but also health of our planet. I don't know if any of you saw, CNN has this program called To Earth. And sometimes I said that CNN doesn't always get it right, but this time they got it right. When they were talking about why the future of food might lie in our past. And really what they were talking about is how going back to some of those crops that we have abandoned is so critical. But here it also takes back to how some of those crops represent our culture, part of our culture that we have left behind us. And just being able to revive that is not just reviving crops, it's also reviving a whole lot of culture for a whole lot of people that was not really being given the right level of significance. So as we go into the implementing food systems that Shakuntala is calling for, let's revive the food culture, let's revive the diversity of food, and let's understand that that's how we actually nourish people, but also nourish our planet. So that's really was the critical takeaway for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Agnes. And I think, you know, that going backwards to go forwards, I think, and is something that we often struggle with, you know, because it's all about innovation and everything, but sometimes it's really going back and looking at what are some of those learnings. And I think, you know, as Daniel shared, an indigenous ingredient and indigenous, you know, different indigenous knowledge is really critical as well.
You also mentioned about culture, and also in my point I mentioned about culture. In one of the side events that we had during the UN Food Systems Summit, it was exciting to see how some foods that people shared were taboo foods in other people's cultures. And some of the local indigenous vegetables that were presented in some other cultures were just seen as weeds, and they were not seen as, you know, something that people could put on the plate. So I like that conversation on, you know, the culture that food actually has, you know, our roots, our origins. So I really like the fact of the food tying in with our culture.
Thank you, Amanda. Maybe we could now hear from Daniel, just your takeaways, Daniel.
Yeah, like I said, it's just using the ingredients. I mean, not everybody's going to find the same Piraduku, but the important is to create a conscience to go get a fresh fish, a sustainably raised fish, and just as well as all the ingredients that are going onto your dish. Know where our food is coming from. That's the most important thing. And also, I also wanted to make another point that I know Shakuntula was saying. It is, I think, part of the solution to this pandemic is in the way we eat, in our nutrition. And I think we need to talk about that a lot more. I don't think there's been enough going on about that. We talk about the big companies.
Daniel, have you noticed that we talk about vaccinations. We do not talk about foods and the effect of foods on the immune system.
Absolutely.
I have hardly seen anyone talking about foods and the immune system. We've concentrated on vaccinations. Not that vaccinations are not all important, they are, but there's more than vaccination.
Absolutely, I agree.
And there's also something which the individual can do. Food choices are individual choices.
Absolutely.
Education.
Yeah. Paul, we've heard from everyone. We are going to Yazan for concluding remarks.
Perfect. Yazan.
Yeah, I just want to build on what everyone is saying, but add another thing is that sustainable eating, we cannot all carry the same diet worldwide. So if everybody decided to go vegan, but everyone needs avocado and almond milk in the morning, that'll put stresses on individual countries, individual regions, and wouldn't be considered sustainable. So we have to look at food that's sustainable to produce and consume in our where we are in our region. And we have a great example here in the UAE. For example, recently an oyster farm popped up, the Bay oysters, which doesn't need any inputs, it doesn't need any feed. It's creating a reef for fish, and it's capturing carbon. And it grows faster than European areas, and it's being exported now to other nations. So, I mean, discovering what is sustainable to produce locally within what people want to consume is the challenge that we face and the goal that we're trying to achieve.
Wow. No, well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining. This has been an amazing conversation that could go on for a lot longer, I'm sure. It's the first of our Sustainable Sunday conversations, and we hope to have these each month with a different group of people and Dr. Kalibata, and to discuss food issues, food history, talk about the future, the past, and a more diverse plate and lots of different ingredients. I'm super excited. I would encourage people that have watched, keep an eye out for Chef Daniel's recipe. It's going to launch today as well. And you can have a go at doing that at home. And we're looking forward to our future conversations. So thanks everyone for all the contributions that you've made.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.